Well, howdy, guys. Welcome back to the RedAss podcast. It is now 2024. We are finally back from our brief holiday, I would say.
So a holiday hiatus.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of us had a lot going on, and there was a lot of craziness and a lot of moving parts, but we are now back and ready to rock and roll here into the new year. But I'm Rob White, fighting Texas Ag class of 14.
And I'm Roy May, fighting Texas Ag class 2015.
So Monday, January 8th. And for those of you in the college football world, it is the day, National Championship Monday. And we didn't really get a chance to touch on kind of the semifinal. We didn't get a chance to really go into our bowl game with the timing, but it's all great and good. I would say the big thing for me, both games were great for the semifinal. I thought they were both highly entertaining in their own right. And,
I thought they were great. I thought they were great games.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, with the Michigan-Washington final, I think I think it's exciting for college football, and I'm not one of those people that says college football is better when X team is good, or I don't necessarily believe in that, but it's okay. I think we've had enough Bama fatigue,
right?
Over the last. I mean, and don't get me wrong, it's certainly well earned. I mean, what Nick Saban's done in Alabama is completely unbelievable, but it's nice to see some fresh faces for a national championship. I don't really have a rooting interest, so I'm actually just going to be able to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
Watch it for what it is, and hopefully what will be a very competitive championship game.
Yeah. And it reminds me a bit of what was going on with the MLB last couple of years. Just like our traditional powers are not necessarily the big names that are in the championship games lately. You've had the Astros, you've had the Rangers, even the Diamondbacks, and the Phillies to an extent. If they've had some historical success, of course, but we're not seeing like the Yankees and the Dodgers going at it. We're not seeing Alabama taking on, the big name. Washington's a nice fresh face in there. And I know Michigan is a traditional power, but they haven't been back here in a minute. So
it's been it's been a long time for Michigan as well. Even though they're considered, one of the blue bloods, or whatever phrase you want to use,
right?
Everybody knows Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the games were interesting. The Bama Michigan game. I've kind of always had a soft spot for Michigan growing up. I grew up and saw the Fab Five basketball, and so that was kind of my era, and like the Bo Schembechler days, and so. I've never really disliked Michigan. And so I was honestly, like I said, the Alabama fatigue, I thought it was nice to see Michigan beat them, quite frankly. I think as you stay in conference longer, your conference allegiance and pride diminishes. I think that's kind of where at least that's where I am.
Yeah.
Because we get on the SEC and everybody's like SEC, all that crap. But really, I don't care. In fact, I would prefer the teams that we have to play regularly not win championships.
Well, and especially the teams that we tend to have beef with, guys like Ole Miss, guys like LSU, Arkansas. Those are the type of teams, and even you look at Alabama's and Auburn's. I think always in the back of our head, especially these days, we're a little bit more like it's good. Obviously, kind of justifies, hey, if we lost to one of these guys, okay, they're a pretty decent team. But I hate the justification argument. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, win your games. It sucks when you lose to those guys. And I've had enough interactions with negative individuals from those fan bases that you can just be, yeah, they can lose. It's fine.
Well, and the other thing is we recruit directly against the people in our conference, right? So when they're wildly successful, it makes it incredibly harder to recruit against them. And yeah, technically, when you're recruiting in a national stage, you recruit against everybody, and I understand that. But you're talking about the people in your backyard, Yeah. So I'm sure it's great for the conference, but I don't think the SEC is going to lose any of its luster just because we don't have anybody in the championship game. So the conference still stands on its own, and everybody knows that. So really, in my the way I look at it is I'd rather they not get there because we have to recruit against them. You have to show that you can get to that level that they're at, and if they keep stacking up titles, they're just going to keep stacking up recruiting classes.
So and there's obviously a very strong argument now that everybody's been saying the likelihood of Georgia should have been obviously in the playoff. They're one of the top 4 teams. I don't disagree. and and obviously you saw how good Alabama is. So at the end of the day, the conference is not going away anytime soon. And
Well, I mean, I think you just have to look at the fact that starting next year, we don't have to have these stupid arguments. I mean, there'll still always be arguments. If you ever make a cutoff, there's always going to be an argument. You know, it's
right.
just like the NCAA men's basketball selection show.
Mhm.
Like, if you get left out, that means you're what 67th in the country technically, because or there's four
Right.
playing games, so 69.
Yeah.
So then you should have just played better.
Yep. I mean,
You know, so when you get to the cutoff, when you expand the field,
mhm.
the cutoff on the back end between 12 and 13, that's I mean, you're always going to have controversy, but that's your own doing. If you played better, you wouldn't have been on the bubble.
I would rather have people complaining about 12 and 13 than complaining about 5 and 4, because 5 and 4, that gets into conference champion territory, and we obviously saw that this year. So it becomes a bit of a issue, and I knew that there was going to be a time coming up at some point where we were going to be sitting here with a bunch of conference champions that were all like 0-1 loss, and there was going to be a discussion. And now we've had that
Well,
conversation.
well, and I think after the bowl games, you saw there's an argument to be made that Georgia should have been in.
Sure.
So, but
It is what it is.
that's a conversation to be had next year.
Oh yeah, and fortunately for us, like I said, it will be less of an issue next year with the 12. That's just going to open up the field for everybody, and I'm really curious to see how some of those matchups play out for next year. I think it's going to be a very entertaining playoff potentially in that sense.
Well, I think this year it was. I think we're really getting kind of the most bang for our buck this year because it being the last year with just a 14 field.
Mm-hmm.
Those semifinals were fantastic football games. You
Oh
know,
sure.
if you didn't have a rooting interest at all, they're just great football to watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Texas. I thought it was funny. You know, they all thought they were just going to run roughshod over Washington, and I'll be honest. I kind of just saw Washington from afar. You know, through clips and highlights.
Yeah.
But Penix Jr. can absolutely sling it.
Mm-hmm.
He is very, very impressive. It's one of those things where, you think, did we did we vote on the Heisman too soon?
Well,
Kind of
and
thing.
and it brings up the conversation that people have been having, all this entire time, which has been, are we doing those awards too early? Do
Right.
we need to push those till after the national
But
title? Because I mean, that's not the full scope of what the season is.
but at the same time, I also understand that, one or two extra games, you know, it, it's a full body of work kind of thing. So I
It
get
is.
that because if you say you're waiting extra games, then the teams that aren't in those extra games aren't, they're not going to get those or the players that are on the teams that aren't in those extra games don't get any extra, play to improve their performance. So I can see both sides of it, but Penix is
Yeah,
it's just, but get back to Penix, he's unbelievable.
he is.
They Washington's defense stepped up when they needed to because their defense is not the strong, part of their team. They have the number one passing offense, I believe, in the nation.
They did, and it didn't help that Texas had one of the worst passing defenses, and we did see the numbers really play out that way. And despite all the efforts that Washington made to give Texas the game late, at the end of the day, they end up pulling out the win in what was an entertaining game and something that, if you're a Longhorn fan, at the end of the day, not anything to sneeze at. It was a good win. Yeah, so it's quite entertaining that. Here we go. Sorry about that. We had a quick little stop. Had to take a phone call.
Well, and getting back to the Washington Texas game, though, I said this last week. I think we saw it bear out, with Texas not having a great pass defense, and then you also realize that they're in the Big 12 that wasn't full of a ton of high power, high firepower kind of offenses.
Weird to say that.
Well, yeah, but what's interesting is I really kind of think Texas missed its chance.
Sure.
Yeah, and there was a whole thing about, how do you feel about Texas being where they're at as opposed to, we just replaced a coach and this and that, and there's some legs to that,
Sure.
but I don't think that it's that big of a situation. Had Texas won and gone to the championship, I think it would have been a much bigger deal. And
Oh, yeah.
regardless of outcome, if they'd made it to the final, I think you do see some recruits kind of opening their eyes, maybe looking the other way, kind of thing. But I really think this is where Texas misses chance because they are losing so much on both sides of the ball.
Right.
And they're going into an SEC, conference slate. And and what I don't think I think they're playing Michigan next year, aren't they? In non-conference.
Maybe.
So yeah, and so this is one thing where I think Texas really misses chance because although obviously with the expanded playoff, there's and I get it, and we can say it because we've learned it now. There is something to be said for the weekly grind of the SEC.
There is.
It's completely different. The environments are different, like the athletes are different, and you couple that with the fact that they're losing pretty much everything but their quarterback and their offensive line.
So they're yeah, like their second game of the season, their first road game, they are going to Ann Arbor.
Oh, and it's on the road. That's insane.
Yep.
So, yeah, because I think he lost like three or four top pass catchers on his offense.
Yeah.
I think 8 starters on the defense are leaving. So it's like I feel like they really missed a window or a chance. Even it might have been small, but they were there, and beating Washington would have changed their entire narrative.
Sure.
And don't get me wrong, I mean they made the Final Four, so they still have something they can hang their hat on. But what they have coming back is going to be tough. And I said this about Michigan too. This may be a tiny little window for Michigan as well, because if Harbaugh leaves, you don't know what they're going to get to replace him, and if that replacement is going to be worth the crap. And it sounds like there's a lot more smoke to this Harbaugh going to the NFL fire than maybe we thought about four weeks ago. So
yeah, and that is certainly a factor for a lot of these teams. And the beauty of our situation is, yes, you do have a new coach, but I mean, it's a complete fresh restart. I mean, we're starting to see the recruits starting to roll in off the transfer portal. Obviously, ranking there got us up to number 3 in transfers, which is not a bad deal.
yeah, Elko has absolutely smashed the transfer portal. What was it like?
Mm-hmm.
I got it here. I think it was like either 9 or 11 commits like over the weekend, basically.
Yeah, he was snagging them. And the other thing that is a great factor that we haven't really talked about was the positive relationships that he's already establishing with a lot more local coaches, which was something that we've lacked over the last couple of you know, reigns, as it were, with Jimbo Fisher and, of course, with Kevin Sumlin. We're seeing a lot more of the encouragement from the other programs. Like Brian said, yeah, it was cool. Elko came out and actually talked to us. Went off on the phone.
Well, I think it was interesting. And I think we've talked about this before. Like the relationship that you have to have with the Texas High School Coaching Association, I think to an extent is kind of absurd.
Sure.
You need to have you need to have good relationships with the high schools you go to.
Yeah.
And those coaches talking, that's fine. But I think it's absurd, but that doesn't mean it's not a thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the fact that Elko understands that, addresses it, and has already like fully engaged in it, obviously is going to be nothing but positive, on our end.
I agree.
So, and I think maybe that played a part with that Purdue kid that's from Bryan.
Yeah, and it's a very very real possibility. He obviously may have wanted to go to A&M, but wasn't really looked at, not given the love. Goes off to Purdue. Wasn't a highly recruited guy at the point, but he's obviously developed well coming back.
Ends up being, obviously pretty darn good player.
Yeah.
Because the Big Ten does tackle and they do play defense, because the Big Ten does like to run a lot.
Yeah. And Purdue has not really been a horrible team over the last several years. And they maybe not necessarily the greatest this year, but they've had their moments. So it's one of those deals. It's good to see these kids getting that extra look. And it's really cool that Elko has hit that portal so hard and taking care of a lot of issues. And apparently the amount of kids that have talked about potentially coming back, guys like Denver Harris and whatnot. And those are always entertaining.
Denver Harris one's interesting to me. But, well, and you also have to understand that, some of the people talking about coming back are people that knew him.
Oh, yeah.
So, because he's just not that far removed, from A&M, or his time at A&M as defensive coordinator. But I think what you also see with these kids, it is not just Elko. I think if you look at the way portal players make their decisions, is different than how high school players make their decision, right? I think that's probably a fair statement. And I think what you see is these kids understanding a good staff, right? They see what the staff is doing. They see who's on staff. These coaches have reputations. They have friends that have played for these coaches at other locations that they can reach out to. So I think it's not just Elko. I mean, obviously it's a ton of him, right? But
Sure.
I think the quality of the staff that he put together is a really, really big deal. And I think you're seeing that play out with the portal recruiting.
I agree. We've seen a lot of good positives on that front. So very excited to see how Elko continues to develop that going into the spring ball. And yeah, spring game ought to be interesting. There'll be a lot of names we don't know.
Yeah,
And,
you don't need a roster printed out. That's for sure.
mhm. But that's a good thing. I mean, I know people always complain about, oh, it sucks that we're losing people. But it's like, yeah, it sucks that we're losing people. But consider what our record was.
Yeah, we're just
It's
yeah, we're losing people that went 5-7. I mean, the reality is
yeah,
we've got to be better.
yeah,
And I'm sure that Elko took full inventory of the team,
yeah.
went down and said, these are where these are the holes on my roster, whether I need starters or I need depth. And he's going out and he's addressing the holes as best he can. And I think he's doing a fantastic job. And you also have to remember, when you're looking at I think a lot of people are like, well, he's coming from Troy. Dude, Demarcus Ware played at Troy. All right.
Yeah.
These athletes are scattered all around college football.
And how often have we heard of like a big name guy who was doing their college career somewhere that nobody would really anticipate being that big of a place and been a phenomenal NFL player? Case in point, one of my favorite examples, Miami of Ohio. Look at Ben Roethlisberger. That's a tiny school, but you develop a player that ends up being long term a very strong NFL quarterback that lasted a long time. And
I was
that's true across all of NFL.
gonna say Brett Favre is another good example.
Great example.
Jerry Rice went like nowhere, didn't he?
Yeah, pretty sure.
It's a nowhere you or something like that.
Yeah.
So you just have to be at the point right now where you trust Elko. You don't have to be excited about the season yet, and I get that.
Yeah.
Like if you're
Mississippi Valley State.
yeah. Yeah, I understand if you want to be in the wait and see, and I get it. I totally get it. I think Aggies or I think we're a little snake bit as a fan base right now.
Oh, yeah.
And so I totally understand the wait and see approach.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily to complain about right now.
No, I'd say two words that I like to use: cautiously optimistic, right? Like to see how we do end up playing out. I mean, I'm not the guy that's sitting here like pumping arms, like, yeah, we're going to win 10 games next year. We're going to roll through the SEC slate. We're going to be rocking and rolling. No, I think that it's going to be an interesting year. And there's so many really great home games on the schedule leading into it. And I'm excited about that aspect for next year.
Well, yeah, I mean the home slate's great, and then on top of that, you know, what like our draw in the SEC.
Yeah.
No Bama, no Georgia, and so in a transition year,
yeah,
that's nice to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we got Notre Dame, but I mean, is anybody shaking in their boots at the thought of playing Notre Dame?
I mean, I wouldn't say shaking in the boots, and certainly with it being at Kyle Field, knowing how we like to bring the energy for those type of games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen it so many years. When we've had UCLA in town, we've had Clemson in town. I mean, even when we had the trip with Miami in one of our worst seasons, we did show up in that game. And so, you're sitting here with 2024 and your non-conference really rolling through. You've got Notre Dame, of course, and then McNeese, Bowling Green, New Mexico State. New Mexico State's not going to be like the easiest game. Yes, it's going to be a new coach because they've shook up everything, but it's something else just to keep in mind. It's going to be an interesting slate. I'm just excited.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just we're at a point right now on the calendar where it's just time for these kids to work.
It is.
We're not going to get anything out of the program other than any more commitments, but those have got to happen here pretty quick because the semester's starting in a week.
Right.
So so back to the national championship game.
Yeah.
Michigan, Washington. What is it? The number one defense. Michigan has the number one defense in the nation, and you got the number one passing offense in the nation in Washington.
Yep. Unstoppable force, immovable object situation.
Yeah. I think I think if Washington can play defense the way they played against Texas, because make no mistake about it, like Texas has talent, all right.
Yeah,
Texas is a good football team,
they are.
but well, they were before they lost all their talent.
Sure.
Um, but Washington was able to keep Texas in check. Now, why Texas didn't just start running the ball down their throat, I have no idea. Um,
Yes.
but it's fine with me because I like the outcome.
Mhm.
But if Washington can kind of bow up a little bit on defense, I think Washington's got a chance to win this game. If I had to pick one like rooting wise, I want Washington to win just because I really like Penix. Like I really like Penix. Um, my brain tells me I feel like the Michigan defense is going to be a little bit too much for Washington.
Mhm.
But again, that's why they play the game, right?
Exactly.
I'm literally just this is one of those statements that we always like to make, but literally in this case, it rings true. I just hope both teams have fun.
No, I mean, really, I don't have that much of a vested interest in this game. I know, Michigan, obviously, having not been there in a long time, Washington having not been there in a long time either. It's nice to have just a nice fresh national championship. It's going to be great for one of these two teams, and frankly, it doesn't hurt us in terms of like massive levels of recruiting because they're so far away.
Yeah.
It's all fine. It's all great and good, and it should be fun. I just don't envy poor Oregon and Ohio State fans for sitting back and having to watch your rival potentially win a title. That was one thing I did not want to have to deal with this year, and fortunately, not a problem.
Well, and Texas had won and had gone to the final. That's in Houston. Like it would have been completely awful and insufferable too. And
Well,
don't get me wrong, we ever get to a title, I'm going to be insufferable. All right, but
there is not a fan base that I think can comprehend just how obnoxious we would be if A&M made it to the national title game and won it.
oh, oh no,
God.
I don't even think I know how obnoxious I would be.
I know Northgate would likely be a war zone. I think you're going to see a lot of other craziness around town.
Yeah, College Station would probably need assistance from the Texas Rangers.
Probably. And we all know how we would be on the internet about it.
Mm-hmm.
We all know. It would be fine. No, Texags would literally shut down.
Oh no, they literally probably have a server meltdown.
No question about it. But
But
that's all hypotheticals and things that we would love to see happen down the line. Of
yeah,
course.
right.
Come on, Elko. We
Yeah,
believe in
tonight though, tonight I'll go ahead and pick Washington to win. I
you. Okay.
think, uh, but it will require a monster game from Penix.
Yeah. I
We're
would say,
talking north of 400 total yardage for him.
yeah.
Well north.
I think Michigan has what it takes to keep them in checks. I do think Michigan wins, but I am pulling for Washington. So
Yeah.
I'm in the camp for that. So
Well,
hopefully,
not
come on,
not to
Huskies.
not to mention the hilarity of the chaos that is the last year of the Pac-12 to win a national championship. Like
Exactly. That was
how perfect would that be?
that's what I wanted. It's like imagine your conference dying, but you get to pretty much hold a national title that you'll never be able to let go. Hey, that's ours. You can't take it away from us.
And all the years of the Pac-12 getting snubbed to even
Mhm.
get in the playoffs because they just couldn't field any decent, like consistent teams. They had good teams that would end up losing dumb games, and
Oh yeah.
so it's the irony of a possibility of the Pac-12 winning the last four-game national champion. Well, at least winning the last national championship that they're capable of winning. Like
Yeah,
it's too great. It's hilarious.
it is. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays. I'm excited for the game. I think we all are. So college football wrapping up tonight. And speaking of other college football games, good on South Dakota State. Took care of business against Montana.
Yeah, that's wild to put your national championship up against the NFL.
I don't understand what they were thinking. You had all day
Yeah.
Saturday to do it.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean, there were some NFL games on Saturday, but I mean,
A couple. And they were later in the day. You could have done it at the same time
mhm,
and did it on Saturday, and it wouldn't have impeded with anything.
bet your ratings would have been a lot better.
Uh, Are you not trying to increase viewership for all levels of your sport?
You know, I'd be interested to see what it would look like for ratings, but I wonder what it would be like if they played it on National Championship Monday, but an early game.
Yeah, do it at like 1 o'clock. Oh,
Have both national championships on the same day.
I mean, as a college football fan, I would be way about it. I understand why ESPN and maybe some of these other people because they want to get all of their talking heads on TV, constantly analyzing every little aspect of the game before we get to the actual game. I'm like, do that
I
on
think
ESPN
I
too. Do
I
it on
still think
ESPN News.
yeah, I still think they get more eyes.
I
Even though it's
agree.
an afternoon on a Monday,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people that take a half day on for the national championship
Yeah.
that aren't even fans of the teams that are playing.
Now, I will say, in regards to the national championship tonight, I don't envy the poor people that are down in Houston getting ready to tailgate because the weather today is a very interesting factor that nobody's talking about. So,
Well, I mean, it's no factor on the game.
no, it won't be a factor on the game, but it's going to be more of a factor of logistics, people getting in and around and all that crap. Because we're sitting, at least in Houston, they're in sitting what they call an enhanced risk. That's a 3 out of 5, and a 10% hatched risk for tornadoes, aka anything above EF2 plus, is potentially a factor. So, not as much of an issue here. We're only sitting at like a 5%. Probably won't see anything, but for anybody listening to the podcast today when it releases, just keep an eye out on the weather today. It's going to be interesting, and we'll see
Well,
what plays out.
I mean, if it's going to be windy and crappy and rainy, like the people from Washington should feel right at home.
Yeah, just a little warmer than they're used to, but yeah, they're going to get it, no doubt.
Yeah, and the folks from Michigan will probably be in flip flops and shorts.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're just loving the fact that they're not in Michigan right now.
Right.
Oh, I don't envy people who live up north during the winter. I don't
No,
envy them one
no,
bit.
I did not enjoy that, quite frankly.
No,
Yeah, I
and
don't know if I told
having
you the first summer or the first year I got to DC. So I signed in July.
yeah,
That first winter was the worst winter DC had had in 50 years. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
of course they knew you were coming.
Just miserable. So miserable.
I vividly remember. So we went, I guess now it's almost 2 years ago. Crazy to think that. But so February 2022, one of the runs that we did Indiana, Iowa, and Missouri in February. And we did Bloomington. And then we ended up in Iowa City. In Iowa City, the wind chill that night was -14. I
No,
took a step outside. I had set a drink outside. Not Not 5 minutes later, I came back. That thing was frozen solid.
I don't believe it.
I was like, that was pure insanity. How
One of,
cold it got.
one of my buddies lives in Tahoe. He sent me a picture. He got in his car. Sent me a picture of the temperature, said -4.
Yeah, no.
Told him, I was like, -4 is not a temperature. -4 means the earth owes you 4 degrees. Like, that's not a temperature.
That's one of my favorite bits. Ron White was talking about being near one of the largest casinos in the world, and they were staying at a bus. He takes the dogs out to go potty, and when he walks outside, he looked at the temperature, and it was 0. Comes walking back in. His wife was like, "Hey, what's the temperature outside?" He goes, "There's not one. This place doesn't seem to have a temperature."
Nice. Yeah, that same buddy, he got a new puppy, I guess.
Mhm.
They opened the door to let the dog out in the morning, and the dog refused to go out.
I don't blame him. It
Yo, yeah,
sucks.
me neither. I can't stand
What?
the cold.
That's like, yeah, they've got fur, but they're not. Even at that temperature, nobody wants to deal with it
No, yeah,
unless you're a husky.
yeah, right.
They vibe out there in the cold. They're like, "Oh, this is cool. What are y'all doing?"
Oh,
Love them.
I want to we're gonna switch gears over to basketball real quick.
Sure.
There's not much to touch on, to be quite honest. But
No.
I will start with the women. I think Joni Taylor is doing a bang up job.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw the women won. They beat Auburn
they did.
by got like 20 points, give or take.
22
Um,
points, I think.
yeah, so I think Joni Taylor is going to have. I think she's going to surprise some people. I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to win the conference or anything, but I think they're going to surprise some people that maybe haven't been paying attention lately to women's basketball because maybe the record wasn't good. And again, Aggies for basketball, if the record's not good, we don't watch.
Oh, sure.
But switching over to the men, they got to get figured out, man.
Yeah, men are. I literally don't understand where we're struggling on the shooting front. I really don't know.
Well, when Boots was out, the problem is the only guy you had on the entire roster can handle the ball is Wade Taylor.
Right.
I mean, that's just a fact of it, man. You didn't have anybody else that can handle the ball, well enough. Um, and with Boots back, you still have to have Coleman, have great nights because we need the scoring. Because really, the only scoring you have is Wade Taylor and Boots. So, and that's no way to, that's no way to have a winning program. We don't have enough shooters and we don't have enough creators. And the LSU game was a perfect example of length. Length will kill us because we're not a tall team, especially without Marble, who's I can't imagine he's coming back. So with Marble out, you have what you have, right? But Solo and I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, you have what is his name, Levesque, I believe is how you say it. The other center that transferred in, but you don't have the length. They've got to find a way to start creating because like their shot selection is oddly enough isn't poor. Like we're not a bad shot selection team, but we can make it easier on ourselves by creating better shots and better scenarios and situations. All we're doing is just dribbling down the court, setting a high, somewhat worthless screen, and then just kind of dribbling around for a little bit, and then we just huck one up. So whatever it is, they need to get it figured out. They need to get it figured out fast because contract extension or not, there's going to be some expectation. There are some expectations on Buzz Williams, and this year it's not making the tournament is certainly does not, match up with the expectations that they have for him.
Well, and I mean, you went the final 340 in the game without making any points at all. And you're running around with only a 25% field goal percentage for that game against LSU compared to their 40. And your 3-point shooting ain't up to snuff right now. So, I mean, you do need to find a way to create better shots and you need to execute.
If you're not going to shoot better, you got to make easier shots. That's all there is to it because and maybe the light goes on, but quite frankly, we just don't have that many shooters on the team. That's all there is to it. Wade Taylor's a shooter and he's shooting like garbage. Hefner's a shooter, but he's a liability on the court as well.
Right.
He doesn't handle the ball well. His defense is okay. So it's tough. Like I don't know how to fix it. Like I'm not the guy that's going to be able to tell you how, but I know what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing isn't good. So it's one of those things where I don't know what, and maybe the light goes on though for a couple of guys, and they do start shooting. And that's the problem is you got guys that aren't shooting at their own normal clip. So even the guys that can shoot aren't shooting worth a darn. It's just this whole confluence of everything, and then on top of that, you get out rebounded on the offensive glass against LSU, and that's like your bread and butter. And LSU is able to do that. And again, that's from their length. I think they have one or two 7-footers. So, but whatever it is, you got to get it turned around because you don't want to dig yourself. I think Hop said this. You don't want to. We've seen that Buzz Williams teams are capable of digging themselves out of the holes, but maybe don't dig one this year. Maybe don't have to rattle off 9 straight conference wins at the end of the year to salvage your season.
Well, and it doesn't exactly get easier with our next game because you're going on the road to Auburn, who looked absolutely lights out against Arkansas.
Yes, they pummeled Arkansas.
So at the end of the day, we're going to need to see some kind of spark because I know early bracketology even still has us floating as a 7 seed, but man, you keep doing what you're doing, you're not going to see the tournament.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because there's some good basketball, in the SEC. Kentucky's always going to be a hard out. Doesn't matter who they've got. Kentucky's always going to pull players.
South Carolina's cruising along this year too.
Yeah, Tennessee, Ole Miss.
Yeah, Ole Miss has been pretty solid in their own right.
I mean, they haven't played anybody, but it's Chris Beard, and as a coach, he's pretty darn good. Arkansas, he always seems to find a way to have good rosters. I mean, the SEC's it's not a top-heavy conference in basketball. At least it doesn't seem like it's going to be this year.
Probably not.
There's a lot of really good teams, and we need to turn it around and be one of those really good teams.
Yeah, at this stage of the game, the only team that's sub 500 is Vanderbilt. Everybody's cruising along for the most part.
But that LSU loss was like a quad 3 loss. Like it's a bad loss.
Not a good loss.
Yeah. So they got to get it figured out. But you look at it on the road at Auburn, it's an opportunity for a good win. So
It is. So if you find a way to pull it off, great. And we, prove us wrong, right?
yeah, yeah,
Please, for the love
seriously,
of God, prove us wrong.
yeah, and I like Buzz. I do. I think he's
I
a
do.
fantastic person, and he's interesting. But personally, I just want to win games.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple thing. I'm a
I
simple
mean,
man, simple,
you,
innocent man
you,
that needs one thing.
and here's the catch: like you can do both. You can be like a really awesome dude and also win games. So just do both.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, come on, Bill. Oh, Kennedy did it plenty,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And yeah, he had his moments, he had his ups and downs, but at least the guy was finding ways to make the tournament and go deep at times. So just that's what we want. That's all we need. Just
And Elko strikes again. Just got a text that we got a defensive end transferring from Marshall.
go. Time to make a post.
Right. But and then we're under 40 days to baseball.
We are under 40 days of baseball. We are getting awfully close. And preseason poll came out. And we from Perfect Game, we kick off the year at 7 for them.
I like that.
Yeah, that's not a bad spot. Puts us just ahead of Texas. TCU is 5. LSU's up there, of course. Arkansas is up there. There's going to be a lot of really tough talent, but always with all
Uh,
these,
adding Texas to SEC baseball is just insane.
it is.
Like because SEC baseball is already so good.
And Oklahoma has their moments. I mean, we saw it
Yeah.
happen, in the previous season.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so crazy. I talk about it. You feel like you wake up from your Thanksgiving nap and like it's already New Year's Eve, because that part of the year flies by so fast, right?
It does.
Then as soon as you get past New Year's Day, it feels like everything's being drugged back to full speed, right?
Mhm.
It's like you kind of getting back to work, getting settled back in,
Mhm.
like vacations are over. It's time for you to like make your new calendar. If you haven't already, you put together your work plan, for the year.
Right.
Um, and then all of a sudden we're like halfway, like we're nearing the end of conference basketball conference play,
Yeah.
baseball starting, and you're like, hey, all of it, like it just whips back into a frenzy, in March. So
Oh, I am definitely looking forward to baseball, though. Let me tell you. But obviously, we'll jump into that when it's a little
yeah,
bit.
we get a little bit closer to baseball.
But handful of things that we're excited for. That's one of them, no doubt. I'm very excited for that team. But the other thing that nobody's talking about because it's really not that big of a deal, but new uniforms potentially on the horizon for baseball too, is what I've heard. At least a few pieces here and there. So looking forward to making edits on those and getting those put together.
Yeah, we need to not overlook softball too.
Also softball. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited for them.
I'm gonna be interested to see how Trisha Ford does. With kind of watching her basically following almost the same trajectory as Joni Taylor with women's basketball. The programs that they picked that they inherited needed some work.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely. And it's not the easiest thing to do, of course, but build it up, make it work. I mean, that's all I can ask for. And I'm excited for it.
well, and I think that's where the cautious optimism comes with football, though, is
Hmm.
because we still have a lot of talent on that roster,
There
like a
is.
lot of talent. So it's not like everybody left and graduated and we're doing a complete like program rebuild. It's not like that,
Mm.
you know. So
And looking at our schedules, should be fine. I'm looking forward to all that. We'll definitely get into that later. As far as what's current in the world today, though, the one thing I did want to ask you about. So New Year's, did you get yourself a resolution? Did you figure one out?
I don't do New Year's resolutions.
Mm.
I just don't like. If there's something I need to improve on in my life, changing calendars isn't going to be the day I do it.
Totally fair.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've done them before, but I don't make a point to have like this year I'm going to. Now, I mean, I have New Year's resolution type stuff for my business.
I was about to say, do you have some yearly goals that you have in mind?
Yeah. I mean, I've got my goals set out for the year for me. And I'm kind of it's weird because we have this coaching and they put out like this template for your business plan,
Hmm.
and it was like 1 5 10. What's your goals for a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And quite frankly, 10 years from now, I think that's just too far out for me to
Hmm.
even wrap my brain around, right?
Right.
So I'm a 1-2-5 kind of guy.
Hmm.
And because I think 5 years out is about as far out as I need to look at things that I can realistically build towards, remember that I'm building towards them and achieving that. Um, and so I've got some fun stuff set out for kind of what I intend to do, quite frankly,
Hmm.
both with just goals, and it's straight numbers goals for me, because I'm in real estate. It's
Yeah.
basically sales. So I've got some numbers goals, but then I have some really exciting stuff happening this year that will help catapult me kind of towards that 5-year goal, which is really it's 3 years, but that's different though. But yeah, but I'm assuming you have some because you asked. So if you
No,
got a New
sir.
Year's resolution, yeah, fire away.
I mean, yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, the big deal is just one thing I really want to do is get the Shred Dirt site really rolling, um, with some new products and stuff. Really get into work with the fine folks over at CH Lone Star, because I know they're trying to really up what they're trying to put out this year with working with a lot more bands. And then, of course, for us personally within the band, just we want to see that growth this year. We want to see the special level of growth that a lot of other bands have seen.
Right.
And what's really going to help out with that is obviously with the new singles. Um, and to that, I've got a few announcements. First and foremost, new single, Mrs. Lonely, will release on January 19th, be that Friday. And so we're very excited for that song to come out. Going to be videos with that as well on YouTube. So we'll be posting, and I'll share links and everything when that releases. Another single that'll come out in February and one at the beginning of April. So we got a bunch of new music ready to hit the road, and some fun shows that we've picked up. A couple that I'm really excited for. We're playing with Pat Green on a
Nice.
couple of shows. We're playing with him at Flores Country Store, outdoor show in March, very beginning of March. And then that very next week, we're going to be at House Pasture in Concan, which is the bigger venue they have out there in Concan on the Frio,
Mhm.
because they're doing like a Frio River, like it's the first weekend of spring break. So they're
Yeah.
wanting to have like concerts and whatnot out there. So we're on the first day, which is Thursday for that festival with Pat. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I played golf out of Concan. I know that area pretty well.
I play golf out at Concan, probably
Well,
the same course.
stayed out there.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's nice out there. No
It is
cell
nice.
coverage, but it's nice.
Mm, that's nice. I just hope that they're a little bit better in the water world this time around, because last several times I've been out there, it's been pretty dry,
Yeah. Well,
unfortunately.
keep
But
keep rooting for rain.
always rooting for rain. Well, and we should see at least here plenty of it today.
Yes. Yes. It started early here at the house.
A 100% chance of rain today. So don't forget that rain jacket when you leave the house. But yeah, everything else is good on in our world. Big thing I was wanting to get done for anybody who's watching. Yes, completely reset up a lot of things in the house. That was kind of my big project during our downtime, and it came across really well. So, but I'll
Yeah,
just
my big project on my downtime was definitely just relaxing, trying to
yeah,
get stuff done.
it's the way to be. So it was a good year. Um, very excited to come into this one. So, as you guys be sure to check us out on all of our socials. I'm Rob. Be sure to follow Rob White, Rob the Slapper on Twitter. Be sure to follow Roy May and 15 on Twitter. As well as all of the rest of our socials. We need to wrap this up pretty quick. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day.
Enjoy
Uh,
the national
Enjoy
championship.
the national championship. I'm Rob White. That's Roy May. We are the RedAss Podcast. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of y'all's day.
Yeah.
Yeah.